Welcome to the Hawkscast, featuring your hosts Troy Donis and Sean McMahon, here to talk you through all things in the South Warrandyte cricket world.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Hawkcast. You're here with your hosts Troy Donis and the fearless leader Sean McMahon. Sean, how you going?
Absolutely thrilled to be back here. I didn't think we'd make it to episode number 2, but look at us, back in the hot seat
They
again.
say that most podcasts don't get past 10 episodes, so we'll see how that goes, Sean. But I have a feeling that your dulcet tones will get us through. Today we've got a pretty ripping show on.
Let's hope so.
Yes, well, no promises, but we've got the great man Binger on the show later on. A very good chat with him, going through his career from juniors all the way through his South Warrandyte days with Gaz and co. And also we've got our coach on the line later, Damien Vozzo, and he'll talk to
the big man.
The big man himself, the 110 average in Chandler Shield, as he so often likes to remind us. He'll talk us through those two scrappy not outs and a couple of other lowlights in his career, as well as taking us through some training regulations and that for COVID, and talking up the young fellas that are coming through at the club at the moment. For this season, Sean, it's been announced there is all one-dayers. Are you looking forward to that?
Absolutely pumped for it. I couldn't be more happier hearing that as a larger fella coming through the grades. I'm definitely looking forward to avoiding chafing induced by 80 overs in the field. So very excited for the one-dayers. Not something that every cricketer will face, but certainly some of us have to deal with. And then, of course, the obvious win of early beers.
They are huge pluses, though. I've got to say, it does shock me, having seen you field over the years, that you would not be inclined to want to be out there for 80 overs. You're one of the fittest guys going around on the circuit, as we all know. Long spells, fine leg to fine leg sort of duty. So I'm really surprised that you'd be keen for one-dayers. But there you have it. Now, let's get straight into our chat with Damo, I think. Plenty to talk about. Damo, thanks for joining.
Oh, thanks for having me, boys. Thanks for the intro. I'm not sure it was that close to being accurate, but anyway, that'll do.
No, we'll let you explain yourself and defend your career and actions later on. But for now, we want to talk a little bit about where the club's at the moment and get your thoughts on last season, how you thought it went both at the ones and for the rest of the club level, and then talk a little bit about how you think we're going to go this year on the field.
Well, I think, look, there's two ways to look at it, probably. From a successful point of view, I think there is some success around the club. I think just in the numbers we've got back to the club. Performances on the field were solid. The seconds and thirds were, extremely good last year. The ones, performed just to expectations. I think maybe slightly below, and that's certainly been a disappointing aspect to the last couple of seasons, really. But look, overall, I'm quite content where we're at. I think, it was always going to be a 3-year plan. It was just to get people back. That creates a lot of, pressure on selection, all those type of things, which is a good problem to have. And hopefully, this year, that'll be certainly the case. People actually will have to perform if they want to stay in their team. And I don't think that was the case even 2 seasons back, where it didn't really matter what you did. We just didn't have the depth there to cover. So, yeah, I'm happy with the way it's going anyhow at the moment.
That's great. And now this season we've brought in Sam Begley from Norwood. He's come back, opening bowler, took 26 wickets in the grade above. Got solo captaining as well. How do you think it's shaping up this season? Do you think it'll be one of the contenders?
I'd like to think so. Look, on paper, I think, our ones are as good as anyone, but I've probably thought that that was even the case last year. Losing X wasn't great, but and we're going to miss him again this year. But the depth that have come in with Beegs, and I think our bowling. Having a look at our bowling, I would suggest would be just as good as any, even in the grade above. To be honest, I think from a batting point of view, there's still a bit of work there, and it's just a case of some players are going to really have to put their hand up, and if we can get that right, I think we should be at least in the top couple of teams in the comp. Yeah.
Do you think the one days this season for everyone out there? Do you think that will suit us? The white ball in the ones?
I don't know actually. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, normally I'd think yes. We've got some really some powerful hitters and all that, but that we lost a couple of games that were costly last year against a couple of lower grade teams. I remember the Churnside Park game was it Churnside Park? I think who beat us.
Yeah.
It was a bit of luck involved. They got away to an absolute flyer, edges everywhere and all that, and so I'm not 100% sure. I think if we play smarter cricket, and that's going to be the key this year. I think the talent's there. I think we just need to be a little bit smarter about the way we go about things, and that also comes down to my responsibility getting that message across, which maybe I didn't deliver properly last year. But I think it should really suit us. With some bowling options and Solo, Barrel, Budgie just batting all throughout the innings. Some big hitters there. So. I think, look, it should suit us anyhow.
And what about further down the grades? How do you think they're all shaping up? Have we got 3, 4, 5 teams this year? What are we looking like?
It looks like we should have 5 teams. Looking at, and I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but trying to work out training groups. There's 60 odd names there. How many of those are certain to train and to play? I'm not sure yet, but I would think having a look at them, we've probably got around that 50 mark of absolute certainties. But then there's a list of 20 odd on top of that that are a possibility. So to have 5 teams, I think is a great fillip for the work the committee's done and over the last couple of years. I remember, when I took this job on, it was, what was it? It was basically 3 the first season was basically 3 1/4. And I was told that it was about 6, 7 blokes who turn up to training on Tuesday nights, and that's about it. And then to get it to last year, where you ended up with 30, 40 at training, and now potentially another 20 odd players this year. It's a big thing, and the depth throughout the grades looks really strong. The seconds should be a very strong team, and I think the thirds with a couple of those young blokes and all that type of stuff coming through as well. Putting pressure on the seconds. So there's a lot of good signs for the club there.
Now you have just.
Can you give us a? Sorry, go, Sean.
Now you have just given us a sort of little lead in there about training, and I know I spoke to you the other week for about an hour on a Thursday morning. I'm not sure everyone else can take an hour out of their company's time to talk cricket on a Thursday. Can you talk us through what the training's looking like under COVID-19 restrictions and how that might all operate in this coming little period?
Well, to be honest, it's an absolute logistical nightmare. There's nothing good about it, other than the fact that something to get us out there is
pump it up some more, mate.
It's I've spent hours on it in work time as well. Hopefully, my boss doesn't listen to this. But there's what we have to do, and one of the biggest issues we have also is our facilities. It's not conducive to having the way that we actually have to set up. The maximum of 10 in a group plus the coach and there's no cross-pollination across those groups. So the only way it's going to work is if people are going to have to commit to the times. We can't have, if we're going to do a centre wicket training with 10 people, I need all those 10 to be there on time. So we're going to have to. It's going to be structured up. It's going to be really difficult. But if we get buy-in from the playing group, it's just going to be almost like we're going to have to do calendar invites almost and say, this 10 is now, this 10. I think we can train with probably 30 at a time. And I've broken up those into groups of 10. And when I say, 30 at a time, that would be 10 in the nets and 2 fielding groups. Then we'll be basically having to work it like a circuit. Whereas this can be a little bit different from, say, other grounds, even say like St Andrews, where they've got 3 grounds, they've got multiple facilities where they can, train and all that. We don't have that option, and one of the biggest issues is, having fielding training coinciding with centre wicket practice is quite dangerous at our ground. There are pockets probably down the end of the grounds, but you certainly can't be running it side on. That ball can travel too quickly to that area, and it's quite dangerous if people are not concentrating. So it's not easy, but at the end of the day is I think I know even myself I'm pretty keen to get out there and just do something. We've all been trapped in these in our houses for long enough, I would suggest.
Yes, definitely. And so, just for everyone out there that isn't quite aware, you touched on a few of them. The regulations are that there's 10 in a group with a coach. They can't cross pollinate, and so they have to clean the ball, or is there any other things like that they have to do?
Yeah, so we have to have a COVID break after 40 minutes as well. That's so that'll involve cleaning balls and equipment and all that type of stuff. Washing hands. We all have to register to say that we're there at training, so they can look at our close contact tracing. There's a lot of things that have to happen, and but we'll deal with it. We can still have a bit of fun. We can still learn a bit. We've just got to try and work out a few of those things. We're probably going to do it as a suck it and see the first week. I'm hoping that we can still train even a week earlier than what was originally planned, but I've got a feeling we're not going to find out until that Sunday before then. If that's the case, we're going to do a bit of circuit sort of work, 20-minute groups and all that type of stuff. We're probably going to have to train most nights of the week, in that, we'll allocate, I think there will be a survey sent out or a questionnaire about what nights you can train. We may look at running Mondays and Wednesdays as well as the Tuesdays and Thursdays, just so that, if we've got 6 groups of 10, it might be group 1, 2, 3 on Monday, 4, 5, 6 Tuesday, those type of things. And those groups will be, it won't be based on team necessarily. It certainly won't be based on selections, but it would be similar to, we're going to have a group of 20 that would be a senior squad, and then another group of 20 that'll be our development type squad, and then we'll further split those into 10 from there. So it's certainly a challenge, but it's not insurmountable either.
And so that's looking to get underway, if I'm correct, when the case averages get below the 5 average in Victoria. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, that's what the rules are at the moment, but I'm hoping there's a little bit of common sense there, and he allows us to get back a bit earlier than that, because I'm not sure that it's going to be down by under 5 by the 26th, let alone the the 19th or whatever it is. So, yeah.
Yep.
We probably won't. The truth of the matter is, we may not know until next Sunday, Sunday week, whether we can train on that Monday. So it'll be a real quick on the bounce. We've got some plans in place. If that is the case, we will. If we get the go ahead on the Sunday, we will be training Monday in some format.
Fantastic. That would be great relief for some of the boys out there that haven't been able to do much. Round 1 is still scheduled for November 14th start.
Yep.
And we've got our gradings just the other day, and I saw the twos have 4 new teams in the division, with a few teams coming down and a few long drives for the ones out to some suburbs in the Yarra Junctions. And then there was the splitting of the lower grades. Can you talk us through what's happened there for us, and if you talk us a little bit about the merger as well of the Yarra League?
Well, yeah, that's that's going to be even more interesting, I suppose, with regional and metro, whether that's going to create any issue. But I think the teams in there are still considered metro. But yeah, look, just going through quickly through the grading, the the first they've got, I think, is it Yarra Junction, I believe they've got to play against. So I think that brings it to 3 teams from the Yarra Valley, which has merged with the RDCA. Last year we had a couple of teams that came in. This year it's a complete merger. So, and that includes teams as far away as, I think, Alexandra are even in it too, aren't they? But whether they're actually
Yep, Marysville.
yeah. So it's certainly going to be interesting. But look, I think it's a good thing for cricket. I think it keeps it interesting to play against new teams and all that type of stuff. I enjoyed it last year. I didn't like the fact that our ones were playing against seconds teams the year before that. I didn't think it helped our cause in any way. So it's look, the merger is. I think it's a good thing for the competition. There is going to be some issues around that. Certainly for if you're coaching juniors and all that type of stuff, to get to grounds in time, and if people are working Saturday morning, so that'll just create a selection. I'm sure there might be the occasional person that all of a sudden has a slight hamstring injury before they have to travel out to Yarra Junction the next day. But I'm sure we can probably think about a few of those people who it would be. But there's a lot of things to consider there, but as I said, I think it's a positive thing. I think it's a positive thing for the seconds who've got an extra few teams in their division. I find cricket more interesting playing against new teams, and part of the reason when I first came over to South Warrandyte was because I'd been playing against the same blokes with the same blokes for 10, 12 years. It was just the monotony of cricket just became a little bit boring for me. And I think that is exciting to play against new teams, and there'll be probably some players that Donna seems to know every single player, especially the bowlers who.
Well, they know me.
Well, yeah, of course they do. But anyone who's a threat to your comp bowling average, you seem to know them all. But, it'd be good for you to, there is some smokies in there now, and you've probably just got away with getting a few extra wickets because you just know how to bowl to the same player all the time. So this might actually test you out, actually, Donis. Actually, so it'd be
few good teams came down, so it's I might have to drop down to the 3s. I think it's probably time.
I was thinking 4s, but yeah, okay. If you think you're still good enough for 3s, that's fine.
Now 3, speaking of, we'll put up a grade, so they're in a E grade now, which is a normal grade, not modified rules. Although this year it doesn't matter so much because it's all one days.
Yep.
And then our 4s are in a new grade called M1, which is the top of the modified. So
Yep.
Goes M1 to about M6, and our 5s are down the bottom. We've got a father-son team there in M6. So
Yep.
Nice spread.
It is, yeah. Look, I think the 4s is going to be a challenge. The top of modified is probably where we've got a lot of young people in terms of not even just age, in terms of their cricketing experience in that. So that will be a challenge. But I think the depth across the board, with the players that I believe are coming back to the club as well. They're certainly going to be, and they've got a lot of experience there. Hopefully, they can help out there as well. So, there's it's going to be a challenging season. Even with the grading systems, we're not really sure how it's going to work. Generally, the M1 was stronger than some of the grades higher because there was a lot of older, very good cricketers playing there. Because of the modified, it was the highest grade of modified, and they didn't want to field the 70 overs. So, but with it being 1 days, is that going to be the same? It's a great unknown, and there's so many unknowns about this season. But I think that's part of the excitement of it all, to be honest.
Lovely. You touched on your own career there, of course. We didn't even have to ask the question. So we might just get on to talking about some of your playing days, because we hear you mention some of the glory times every now and then. We want to get into the deep, dark corners of your career as well.
Yeah.
Can we start off with your junior career? What was it like? Where did you play, and how does it feel to be the worst player in your family?
Well, to say I'm the worst in my family is not necessarily true. I'm better than my nonna. She had no arms and or legs. So, but yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I am the worst in the family. I played my junior cricket at East Box Hill. I was not a great junior cricketer. I was just okay, and that continued throughout into my senior career. I was just I loved playing, and I got the best out of myself. I wasn't one of those ones who was playing in juniors, and I was playing in the seconds or the ones. I was playing fifths and sixths in for East Box Hill in my junior days, and it wasn't probably until I was 18 and I grew. I didn't grow till I was 18, and I still haven't really grown that much. But
I was going to say these fives and sixes definitely rings true to the two hosts today.
Yes, with Binger,
with yourself, with myself, with Donis. There's some real classless cricketers going around. Sorry, continue.
Yes, well, that's true. And look, it wasn't until I was 18 or 19 that I there was quite a few mates who I grew up playing junior cricket with. They were playing seconds and all that before I was, and then I was still in the thirds as a 17-year-old, and then within a couple of years I was playing ones and I was playing representative cricket. So this is what I tried to get the best out of myself, and I was able to do that, but I was still a very average cricketer. Yeah, unfortunately.
And your senior career started at Box Hill. When did you make the move to South, and how did that come about?
Well, as I said, I was getting bored just playing with the same. There was a little bit of politics happening at my old club, East Box Hill, and I actually got offered a bit of money to go to East Ringwood. Actually, a significant amount of money. I've got a feeling when they rang me, they thought my name, it was Michael they were speaking to, but I did tell them many times, "Oh, this is Damien. Do you know that?" And anyway, I did. I actually got offered $5,000 to go and play at East Ringwood, and I met with them, and then my cousin Shane Hanson, which I don't try to talk about too much.
The great man Hanno.
Great man Hanno, son of the great lady Cheryl.
Yes.
Haven't come across
South Warrandyte royalty and one of the best sweep shots in the world, allegedly.
Oh, I think it's one of the worst, but certainly we had his measure in backyard cricket. So Shane, I've spoken to Shane. I said, "Yep, I'll catch up," and I caught up with Barry Williams. I still remember it, and Brasher was there, and they offered me $500 actually to come to South Warrandyte. So it was $5,000 versus $500, and there was I knew I was shit, so I didn't want to be getting paid for being shit. It was just there was a feel about that. Barry is as much as he used to absolutely bully me the whole time, he's one of the best blokes I've met in cricket, and I got that feeling from him straight away. So I decided to play there, and it ended up being that my first time there was probably the most enjoyable sort of cricket I'd had and it was for 5 years or something like that, and unfortunately we were able to win a premiership the second year I was there, in the top grade, and it was just it was a great time with great blokes.
Well, now you've we've brought it up. You might as well talk us through it because you mentioned it every other week at training around the club. Anyone mentions any number, you whip out your 110 average in the Chandler final series. So talk us through it. Talk us through your innings there. And
Well, let's just say I didn't make a run for 2 years really, but anyway, I made a 50 in the semi-final the year before or something.
So I'm hearing big game player.
Yeah, well, yeah, I
Clark Keating type.
I wasn't that at East Box Hill. I was the opposite of East Box Hill. But anyway, so we came to our finals. I think we finished top, and we the first final we in the qualifying final played against Templeton. We were chasing 330 odd, and it might have even been more than that, 350 maybe in a final, which is not good. But it was also during the drought. And we're playing at home. The ground, you only had to block it, and it was 4 runs.
Quite quick, if I remember.
Yeah, you could block it. You could block it for 4 up the hill. So that's how quick it was. There was not a blade of grass on the ground. It was actually dangerous. You'd come off the field bloodied, and they used landfill with rocks and everything. And part of that's how I one of the highlights of that game was I ran barrel out on 98 in the final.
And we thank you to this day for that.
Yeah, it was. Look, it just wasn't his time. The kid, he had to learn how to do it. It was my time to shine, and so anyway, we were chasing that, and we got down to 8 for, and we needed 8 runs off 8 balls, and I hit Degenart for 2 fours in a row, and we won that game, and I ended up about 60 odd not out. And it was, we then had the week off, and I'm not sure. I did go down and watch a very little bit of the Templeton versus North Croydon, and North Croydon got up fairly convincingly. We playing them in the grand final, which was at Silcox, because that was the only ground that they were allowed to water because of the dog training, apparently. So we had our grand final there. I think we must have won the toss, I presume, because we had a captain that did win the toss and bat first in those days. And
Unbelievable.
I think very quickly we were not many, 4 for not many, maybe. Yeah, and then my brother joined me, and he should have been out, and we should have been probably 5 for 25 or something, but he got dropped. And then I actually started to bat all right, and I do my highlight of my cricketing career with my brother. He actually says, I don't know how to bat anymore, mate. How are you doing this? And because I actually started to get on top of the bowlers and all that, and he just couldn't hit them. And then, I don't know, probably about 20 minutes later, he'd gone about 40 runs in front of me. But that was he always did that to me. He always took my glory. But so I ended up making 40. Michael and I probably put on 100 that day, and I'm not sure, we ended up scrounging out 200 or something. And they got off to a bit of a flyer, but it was just then. It was Aldo, who was our wicketkeeper at the time. He took 3 of the best stumpings you've ever seen, and Chad Rogers, and it was a great team. Steve Garrett, who's probably one of the best cricketers I've ever seen in local cricket. And, Chad, and my brother wasn't too bad, but just great blokes. Cooder, Rabbit, Skull, Jezza, who's one of the greatest team players I've ever played with. Barrel was the young kid, and he was it's strange that we've been mates. He was even dumber then, which is it's probably hard to believe, but he was immensely talented, and it was just a fantastic year, and loved every second of it. And those boys are I'm glad happy to say are still my mates to this day. But it wasn't all about me.
No, we're making it all about you today, and it's been all about you the last 3 years, and I'm sure it's going to continue. So,
Right.
What's your top score? What's your big moment in local cricket?
Probably over in England was my biggest moment. I made a few hundreds over there. I played against some in a real that was the one time I'll say I was an okay cricketer. I went pretty well over there. I won the Sunday League Player of the Year over there, and against some blokes that played Test cricket, which probably people don't know, but Angus Fraser and Chris Lewis, and playing against them, and a lot of West Indian cricketers and Pakistanis and all that type of stuff that have played Test cricket, and they all thought that I was some sort of Australian cricketer. I said, "Yeah, I'm from Australia. I play in local cricket, not even district." They didn't even get it.
The hallowed turf of Coleman.
Yes, well, no, at that stage I was at East Box Hill, and it was one of those things. I ended up, playing above my ability, and made 100 and one of the key games over there was we were going to call the game off. It was an absolute green top, but we had to play because it was just if you finished on top. There was no finals in that type of cricket, and we went out and I think we were 5 for about 8 or something like that. I got hit about 4 times in the first, and then I just thought I'd hit out and end up making 142 off 100 or something. And there's nothing that'll ever beat that innings for me in terms of the situation and the surface on it. But yeah, other than that, there's very few. I mean, I have made maybe I think 1300s, but yeah, I've been a cricketer, to be honest.
Lots of tyre pumping here, so I'm going to have to bring you back down now. You played in our premiership win, our one and only Chandler flag. We've come from B grade to win Chandler in less than a decade, and then just a few years later, you're playing for us against that same team, Croydon North.
Where this is going,
and we have to win the game to stay in Chandler Shield.
Crucial.
We've brought back Brasher from the grave. Crucial game.
Yep.
They're about 8 down, not many to go. Ball comes straight to you. Talk us
Oh,
through
we
what
need a
happened.
big game player right now.
Yeah.
You'd think you wouldn't want any other man below.
Where you just that awkward sort of height where you don't know whether to go fingers up or fingers down. It was a challenging catch that was hit straight to me.
So straight at your belly button.
No, it was at me. It was sort of that little bit lower than the tit area, and it was just a little bit to me left. And whatever I did was completely wrong. I went fingers down, and I made a meal of it. And I dropped the catch. Sleek was bowling. Sleek wasn't too happy with me. And have you ever seen Sleek angry? It's not a good sight. And
The white Maori can let rip.
yes, and I dropped the catch. We went on to lose the game, but it was 8 for, so there was a lot of situations that could have happened after that. We actually had Sacristani absolutely plumb on when we had him 9 for, and anyway, it wasn't a great moment for me at South Warrandyte.
And so we got relegated. We've never been there.
We got relegated, and I left in absolutely embarrassed. Never wanted to be seen again.
And have you played? Is it true that you've not played since?
That was the second time I was there. Yeah. No. Then that's when I went to. Did I go to Bayswater Park? I can't remember which time. I I went to Bayswater Park. And played there, and I played ones there for a couple of seasons, and then coached there for 1 season. So
right,
and that was basically it. But my last few games were playing, sort of seconds. I played a couple of games in the seconds, and for Baysy Park, and I remember
nothing wrong with that.
Lance 1 for 4, and I got given out LB, and I thought that was probably enough for me.
Well, fair enough. I know your son Lockie, who plays in the threes for us, is very keen to get you back down with some father-son cricket before he gets too good for you, which is any day now, going by the way he's growing and also the way you're growing. So I'd advise you to take up that opportunity.
Oh, well, yeah, look, I mean, he actually did tell me to mention him on tonight's episode. So Lachlan, this is me mentioning you. He has told me that he...
Super coach runner-up, Lachlan Vozo at the South Warrandyte League. He put in a fantastic effort.
Yes, he did it great. It actually that's certainly something that got me through this this lockdown, watching him go well in the Super Coach and just knock you blokes off one by one. It was just brilliant. And looking at everyone sook up about it. But look, Lock he's a bit of a mini-me. He loves his cricket. and I'm proud of him. And he does want me to play a game with him. And the plan was to do it last season, but we ended up with so many numbers that it just wasn't possible. But yeah, the plan is I will try and play a game or two this year and see how I go. I really haven't picked up a bat for basically 2 years, and if no one sees me play, they can just sort of be have this image of this star that I try to make myself out to
Sort
be.
of mesmerised by the 110 average we hear 2 to 4
Yeah,
times
that's
a
right.
training session.
Yeah, so that's why I haven't picked up a bat, because I don't really want to show them otherwise that I am actually shit. So I've just got to try and I'm thinking about trying to hide myself, and I'm hoping that that's when there will be a ban on crowds at games, and it'll be just those 10, and I'll pay them off, not to say how shit I was, and then we'll go from there.
Don't you worry, we'll be
Oh, the club's borderline.
live streaming that one around the globe in
Exactly.
high
We bought an
definition.
iPad just to film it.
Yeah, well, let's hope not.
So then, other than your son Lockie, who Troy and myself are huge fans of, which
Yeah.
juniors are you looking forward to seeing this year? Are there any names you're sort of starting to watch? I know there are a few very promising boys who played mostly threes last year, but had a game in the twos. Who's sort of catching
Look,
your eye?
I think they all can. To be honest, I think they all got the ability. I mean, I think Emma's is going to be a very, very good cricketer. I think he'll definitely be a ones cricketer at the least in the years to come. I think he's got enormous ability, and the Brasher boys obviously, they've got so much talent. I'm sure that they'll probably both go on to bigger and better things beyond South Warrandyte at some stage. But I think at the moment it's a good grounding for them when they're still young to be playing thirds and the occasional game of seconds playing against men. Um, they're far ahead of where ever I was, and even some of my brothers were at that same age playing sort of seconds at 14 and all that type of stuff. And Lucas could probably play. Um, you know, Lucas is the type of player who could actually take wickets in our ones. He's probably got a bit of work to do on his fielding and all that. It's just not a thing from a confidence point of view. If a ball gets hit him hard, or he has to go out and face a quick bowler, both of those have the ability to, and Emma's as well. There's aspects of their play that they could play ones now, but you're just looking for the overall, detrimental effects that it could have on them down the track. So you just got to be a little bit careful with them. But I have no doubt they'll be ones cricketers and beyond. And obviously, Rowi's he's a great cricketer as well. I'm not sure his future will be even at South Warrandyte as well. I hope it is, but I'd suggest he'll be playing a fairly high standard of cricket as a wicket-keeper batsman somewhere in the near future. Big Dog, I'm not even sure whether he's playing. He's obviously just, he's about as good as a junior cricketer as you've ever seen. And then you've got, Cads and Will and a few of those kids coming through. I mean, there was a couple of those under 14s from last year. The name escapes me. The little leg spinner,
Delberto.
James Delberto.
Alberto. He's obviously got a lot of ability. There is a bit of ability in those junior kids coming through as well, and hopefully I haven't missed anyone.
No, that's fantastic. Plenty to keep an eye out for in the future. And we've got your good mate Binger coming up later, and just wanted to ask you. We know his famous cut shots won over many runs, but can you tell us where we should have been bowling to Binger all these years? Because I tried to bowl to him on leg stump and he was still cutting it. Was there any spot that we should have been bowling to him?
My history with Bingham was you just bowl it on the stumps and that was good enough. But my medium paces were pretty handy in the day. Yeah, Binger. What the one thing Binger was, we actually had a few partnerships, Binger and I actually used Binger a lot in coaching, and this is one of my frustrations that and Binger will say it himself that every single player in the ones has got more ability than Binger. But Binger outperformed a lot of those players in our ones, and did so for many times. he used his mind and his craftiness and his his cricket brain to will himself to perform at a high level. And and I've said this about the boys. I mean, and this is not trying to be about me, but I averaged 40 odd or something in one season at South Warrandyte in Chandler, and to see blokes who probably average 50, 20, 25, they're 100 times better than I ever was. And and Binger would say the same thing. He would say that they're a lot better than he was, but he would have averaged 30s some years. I'm sure there was a couple of years where he didn't as well, but it shows that there is more to it than that. To me, it was Binger would people just got too frustrated with the way he batted, and tried so many different things. With Binger, unfortunately, no, you shouldn't be trying to do too many things at all. You should be just bowling the same ball, six is the same. But often people didn't do it. They just wanted to sledge him, and he'd always have the last laugh, or most of the times he would anyhow.
Fantastic. And speaking of those boys, Gaz and all that, when are you going to start playing vets?
Who?
You're old med now. You've got to accept it. All Jez and all of you boys.
Well, Jez has played a few games. I'm not sure that Gazza qualifies yet. In fact, I'm sure he doesn't. But I'm not sure of the others. But I don't know. They've got obviously a lot of other things going on. They're great fellas, great cricketers. I mean, I'd love to have them. I mean, obviously Gazza could probably. I'm not sure Gazza would be playing vets at this stage anyhow, even if he did qualify. But he'd
be a dangerous week for the vets who came up.
yeah. But vets cricket's probably not really for me that much. I'm not. I don't know. I just don't necessarily have the interest. I think it's a lot of grumpy old men, and who still think they've got it. Some of them, but it's not necessarily. If anything, I'd probably still prefer to play on Saturdays at the moment if I was going to play at all. But that's not to downgrade playing the vets. And I'm sure we've got plenty of others there that want to play it, and maybe I'm not sure even how old Smitty is. Maybe Smitty, he looks like he's 50. So
yeah, I don't think they're not asking for ID for Smitty.
So
he looks. If you're 45,
we'll try and
you
get
don't
Smitty in there.
ID.
Smitty was actually a handy cricketer. He just was too much of a prankster. Really, he didn't actually realise he was actually a handy cricketer, but he just probably mucked around a bit too much.
He's definitely good behind the bar.
He's a very good man, very funny man. Well, he thinks he's funny.
And last question from me would be, speaking of funny men, when you were on the field, were you a sledger, Damo? What were you like in the field?
No, not at all. No, I was the opposite to a sledger. But I was just mine was to keep the players interested in a long day. It was just cracking shit jokes, which I still do, and it was just non-stop jokes. And what I thought was funny, and look, there's a lot of them there, but they're all sort of, they wouldn't, if I told them what I used to say, it wouldn't make any sense to the kids these days. But it was just, that's all I was. I didn't believe in sledging. I sledged twice in my career, and once was in that grand final against Croydon North when Hilly ran out his brother, because they were all there the week before 2 weeks before when I ran out Barrel. They'd finished their game early and were watching us play. And from the moment I came in that grand final, he ripped me and just kept on every single ball about how selfish I was, running people out and all this type of thing. And I ended up batting for a couple of hours, and then the next day when they're chasing, he's very early on in his innings, he ran out his brother, and did I give it to him as he was?
Oh, I love that. Definitely do it after they're already out. It's not even a competitive advantage. It's just sort of a sore winner move.
And I was standing behind Benny Garner as I was doing it. A couple of tall blokes, and I felt really tough there for a second. Felt like I was one of those sort of muffled ones, as if he didn't know, just in case I didn't want him to know it was me. But I wasn't a sledger. I certainly don't. I mean, I understand, even if you got cancer, I suppose it doesn't stop you, Donis. But I don't like I actually enjoy. I mean, Jazza was very good at it. I actually did crack the shits at the. I remember that year I called the blokes in after we'd been embarrassed one game, and I just went fucking nuts at them because I thought we went personal on a player, and I just don't think there's any need for personal stuff. And from that point on, there was no personal sledges. It was just good hard stuff. I mean, it wasn't me, but Jezza was very good at it. But I don't believe in the personal stuff. I just don't think it's necessary to be discussing someone's personal trait. And I'm probably the odd one out with that, but that's the way I played the game, and I was brought up that way, and I won't probably change. My brothers were a lot more aggressive than I was on the field. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Damo. It's been enlightening as always, and fantastic chat with you. Thanks for your time, and we'll hopefully see you out very soon.
I look forward to seeing you blokes at training. You blokes going to turn up to training?
Oh,
no, there's a lot going on. You guys are pretty much regional from my perspective anyway, so I wouldn't want to be risking it.
Okay, so if we get you into these groups of 10, I am expecting you to turn up. So do the right thing.
Look forward to it.
See you in a couple of weeks, hopefully.
Catch you, mate.
Sounds good.
All right, see you, boys. See ya.
Sean, one of the favourite things for a niche cricket fan like ourselves and our good listeners out there is the Sheffield Shield. I think it's the Marsh Sheffield Shield. They always get the big sponsors there. And Shield Cricket's back. It's streamed live onto the cricket app because absolutely no one on TV will pick it up. And I've noticed, they're playing in the hub at the moment in Adelaide, and some of the grounds that they're playing on, Sean, are not quite the glitz and glamour you probably dreamed of when you started playing professional sport as a youngster. Grounds such as the Karen Rolton Oval, the Gladys Elphick Reserve, and Park 25, my personal favourite, is hosting some Sheffield Shield cricket. Sean, I could have sworn there's some of the grounds that we've been playing on out in the RDCA lately. What do you reckon of playing some professional cricket on Park 25?
It does sound suspiciously like being lost, looking at the Melways, trying to find your way in some suburban back streets for your 4th 11 game of cricket, doesn't it, Thomas?
Absolutely. I feel like that ground is actually at St Andrews. Very green top there. Great deck for the fast bowlers. So be interesting to see how the Shield cricket goes. And one of our favourite things to do here on the show is go over some of yesterday's heroes. There was a time when Shield Cricket was hosting the Boxing Day spectacular, 100,000 people between Victoria and New South Wales. And then now there's the Big Bash. But there was a time in between that, Sean, where your average Shield cricketer could have walked into a cricket club and nobody would have recognised him. And so we just want to gloss over some of those people that were starring on C7 Sport in front of 6 people and their mum each show. And this week we're going over the great John Moss, who had a glittering career for Victoria. He, in one season, made over 900 runs, and in the 2004-05 season, and was a stalwart of Victorian cricket for over 10 years. Do you have any memories of the great John Moss? Sean, or are you like the rest of the 99.9% of us out there?
Well, I was very surprised to see his name come up on Cricket Australia's best 30 Shield seasons of the last 20 years. And I thought, well, he's the perfect man to be talking about on this show. So I did a bit of research before the show. And I thought, wow, this guy has been sued by Boy George, only to find out that that was actually, in fact, another John Moss, who was a drummer for a band going around, and that John Moss did not even make the front page of Google. So tough times for niche Shield Cricketer of the Week.
That is very rough. He was a enigmatic player, and obviously his life will continue to be an enigma if he can't be found. We're rolling on to a new segment we've got here. We want to celebrate some of the former South Warrandyte cricketers who have gone on to play at some higher levels, but probably have the same anonymity as the great John Moss. And the first one I want to mention today is Tim Sheehan. Tim was a South Warrandyte junior here in the 90s and has gone on to forge one of the most successful district careers of all time, having played almost 20 years at Fitzroy Doncaster, two-time premiership player, one of their all-time leading run scorers. He's played over 200 games of Premier cricket. He played some Victorian twos and almost made the state team many times earlier in his career. So there you go, former South Warrandyte Junior, Tim Sheehan. And now we've got time for our next guest, the great Binger. How are you going, mate?
Very well, thank you, mate. Yourselves over there?
Yes, very well, Binger. Can you confirm whether you have a real name, and if you do have a real name, what it is?
My real name is Michael Crosby.
Michael Crosby. There you go. I think many of people like Cooter or other great names in there would only know you as Bigger, so good to scratch that one off. You had a glorious career over a couple of clubs, but you started off, I believe, at Croydon Rangers. Can you just tell us about how you got into cricket originally before you came to South?
Yeah, no, it was originally my brother played cricket, and like a lot of younger brothers, I sort of idolised him and followed him everywhere he went. And then I sort of watched him on the weekends, and then finally got old enough that I could go and have a go at the under-12 level at Croydon Rangers.
Lovely. You lived near there at the time, did you?
Yeah, lived near there. Just lived in Croydon. Grew up in Croydon for most of my life. My dad was the sergeant of Croydon, and so my brother ended up being the president of Croydon Rangers. So we had a pretty strong family tie there.
Yeah, wow.
One of the all-time great guys, your brother. It's very rare that two captains get the pleasure of rocking up to a game and being able to shake hands and say, look, we'll call this game off for rain, when there are 22 other blokes who still want to play that day. But I had the pleasure of doing that with your brother 2 years ago.
Yeah, my brother actually commented on that. He said to me, if you had that game become totally clear why you went to South Warrandyte, if they're the sort of blokes you get to rub shoulders with each week, because there's none better than the guy you guys call Fridge.
He's absolutely spot on. So then what was your move to South Warrandyte? What brought that about? Was it a few too many spa sessions at Steve Garrett's joint and they slowly wore you down, or what was the story behind that?
The story behind it was I started off in the lower grades and sort of worked my way up and ended up getting to play first learning cricket. And we were a solid team at Croydon Rangers. We had a few average players, a few really good players, and a couple of years in a row, I got to play against South Warrandyte and play against the likes of Ben Neagle, who I'd known personally since I was extremely young, Josh Barrett, David Hill, Steve Garrett, Steve Lindsay, David Hozzo, and
the who's who of South Warrandyte.
Sorry?
The who's who of South Warrandyte, the glitz and the glamour.
Yeah, you can ask him as well. They'll fill you, each and every one of them will fill you in as well, except for Barrel, humble with a lot. But I couldn't believe the way they went about their cricket and the aura that they had. I reckon every time we played them, they nearly beat us before a ball was even bowled, just because of the way they went about their cricket. And it was really impressive, and I managed to have a little bit of success against them. And speaking to Steve one night, and it all sort of happened pretty quick, and I ended up coming across to try my luck at South Warrandyte.
Oh, lovely!
Love that.
That's quite a poaching story. Hopefully, no one's doing that to us, but we'll continue to pull bingers from other clubs as the years go on. Can I ask, through your junior career, when and where did you learn the famous cut shot? Because anyone that's seen you bat knows that you just get right down on that back foot and you late cut everything, no matter if there's 4 gullies, 3 points, 3 slips, whatever, you'll late cut that ball straight through the field. Where did you pick that up in your career?
I think I picked it up. I picked up early doors from just about being scared of the cricket ball, and as sort of I got older, I probably continued to back away, and the bowlers followed me, so I had to come up with a bit of a defensive mechanism. I've never been, and it's surprised to tell you, Don, this, but I've never been an extremely quick scorer of the cricket ball.
I'm shocked.
My first ever game of under 12s cricket, I managed to make 30, and you retire at 30. But I've actually got to retire. I didn't actually get to come back on because I brought up my 30th run in the 45th over. The whole way through, I've just been boring as.
Lovely. I've certainly seen you teach many of juniors that cut shot, and I've always been amazed the amount of fielders that someone can put there, and you still just have a go at it, and it always comes off. Never fails.
Very demoralising as a bowler. I certainly know as a 16-year-old, I think Bing had just made the move, and I'm sort of bowling with the ones and the twos at that point, and feel I'm bowling good line and length to Binger, and they're all hitting sort of top of off, just outside off, and he's just hit me for boundary after boundary down to the short boundary at South Warrandyte. So teaches you very, very quickly, got to be full to Bing.
Yep. It also teaches you cricket's a shit game. Where you bowl it, someone will still cut you. You think you're going well.
Absolutely.
You think you're going. Now, I've got another question for you, Bing. So you've played cricket for many years. I think maybe less so in the last couple, but obviously had quite a few years there.
Yep.
What's your career highlight? Have you ever cracked the ton, or what's your sort of most successful point from a personal perspective?
From a personal perspective, actually, it was at South Warrandyte, Sean. It was probably about 7 years ago, and the previous season I had a really bad season. I think anyone that lives in the South Warrandyte postcode or within the 5 suburbs either way knows I hit about 38 runs in 1 year.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
We didn't want to bring that up.
And so that was fun. And the round one of the next year, Steve Garrett was back from Richmond, and I was due to line up in the twos, and Joshy Exley hurt himself the Thursday night before the first game, so I got a reprieve and kept my opening spot. And I came out round one and I hit 49 against East Ringwood, and that's that's probably my most favourite knock, because I remember the captain of East Ringwood was a really nice guy at the time, and I hit a run and everyone up on the hill at South went berserkers started cheering. And he said, don't be arrogant, Binger, raise your bat. And I said, no. He goes, mate, it's a great 50, raise your bat. And I said, I think you'll find I'm on 39. And he said, well, what? I've had some good knocks, taken some good catches. But I've never ever had a cheer. Then when I hit that 39th run of round one.
Unbelievable. One of the all-time great stories, that one.
I was going to ask you about that season, because obviously it would have been incredibly challenging at the time. Can you take us through a bit of that, through the down season and the challenge of that every week, rocking up again, knowing that you probably failed a few weeks in a row, and then and the mentality to turn that around in pre-season. I think you came back and made 250 plus runs in the Chandler Shield. So how did you turn that around mentally in the off season and keep yourself, make sure you kept yourself motivated to perform the next season?
Yeah. The captain I had that year was Benny Neagle, and Benny Bat's been going through a real bad slump. I reckon you've got to have a real good captain around you. I couldn't ask for a better person than Nate is. We have a real strong personal friendship off the field, but as captain, he was immense. He was unbelievable. I took it very personally. I worked very hard in the summer, but I learned more from that season than all my other sort of 20 plus seasons put together.
Wow.
Later on, I went on to captain, and I saw people sort of starting to get into a rut like I was in. Then I watched them start to make the same mistakes I made, and it really helped me as a captain, and it helped me as a leader, sort of deter people on giving advice on how to get out of it. Like that season was extremely hard, because I don't think people knew how hard I was working. I was paying for batting coaches left, right, and centre. I was going down the nets literally 4 nights a week. I was probably hitting 1,500 to 2,000 cricket balls a week.
Wow.
Just trying to fix it. but all I was doing was sharpening up on all my failures I was doing. Where now I tell people to step away for a bit. Like we had a bloke later on after that season who I was sort of mentoring a little bit. He was coming off a couple of ducks, so I refused to leave bat for 2 weeks. But I still picked him, and he came out the following week and hit about 65. He just felt free, and he almost forgotten his bad habits and just went back to just playing cricket.
Yeah, that's some great advice for a perennial duckmaker like myself. I might just not.
I was going to say, if you ever learn to bat, you might be able to apply some of them, Troy.
Yeah, bugger. Yeah, it's an incredible story, an incredible mental story of success, I think. So well done for that of certainly one of the folklores around South Warrandyte. Still not sure how you picked for all the games, making 38, but we'll leave that to another side. I'm very glad that you bounced back in the way that you did.
I guess that just comes back to being a legend, though. Like local sport.
You can't drop the bloke who's the funniest guy off the field with a beer in his hand. So, no, that rings true. As a captain, that's my key selection policy.
I can imagine.
Can you talk us through the return to Rangers then? So you had obviously a fairly successful stint at South Warrandyte, played a lot of finals and that. But you went to Rangers, a bit of a homecoming.
Yeah, a bit of a homecoming. A few sort of older people that I sort of played with had left, and South Warrandyte was starting to go into a different direction, and that sort of thing. And then I was all on board. I was very close with our coach. I'm still very close to Stewie Battens, sort of one of my great mates who I still catch up with regularly and got more respect for than most people in the world. Dave Cutler was going to be our captain, and it was all systems go. And I got a message from Croydon Rangers president saying, "Can we catch up for a chat?" And about 14 hours earlier, actually, my wife had just given birth to our first child, and so I read this message. I look over, and she's asleep in the bed, and my daughter's asleep. So I snuck out for a cheeky quick little meeting, and then I just thought it was just because I knew the previous president. I thought he just wanted a bit of advice going forth, what to do with Rangers, because I knew they had a few tough years in a row there. We had a bit of a chat, and then as I went to leave, he offered me the captaincy. And, it was a club Tollsville. It was the club my brother had been president for a long time. He was still there. My sister-in-law was invested at that club, and I just thought it was time to go back and just try my hand at captaining, which is not something I ever thought I would get the opportunity to do. So I jumped at it.
Fantastic. And lo and behold, for us, David Cutler did his ACL just a couple of weeks after you'd accepted that. So probably could have been captain for us as well. So sliding doors there, but it's always good to see someone return back to their home club. Now, I've got a question for you. A couple of years after you took up that captaincy, both of our teams were struggling up in Wilkins. The relegation game going into it, everyone knew bottom two teams. The loser was probably gone. I think you batted first, made 130 odd. Now I need to ask you, is your favourite saying, and one of the things I learnt off you the most, is that cheaters never lose.
Yes.
And I want to know, just how far did you move the boundary out of the game before we had to bat?
Well, it's interesting because before we actually moved the boundary, we had to hunt around for a lawnmower. We found a lawnmower. I think we got an extra 13 metres, which was handy.
Because I swear, I was going to say, if you said anything less than 10, I was going to say you're lying. But somewhere around the 15 mark, I reckon it was out. I remember the umpire moved like one cone in like 1 metre after he saw it. And
that was Marty Clahesi. That was handy because I fixed his evaporative cooler about 3 days earlier.
I'm pretty sure we lost that game by about 10 runs. I know because I snicked off to lose us the game. So that was a fantastic day. And luckily for our teams, well, not luckily, but there was a restructure and both teams ended up getting relegated. And so the following year, you play South Warrandyte in a grand final.
In a grand final, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was surreal, sort of the captain of South Warrandyte, Farrell, is one of my best mates, and it was surreal. We had heaps of battles throughout the year. They had our measure most for the first half of the year, and we managed to put a few plans in place to get them in the back half of the year.
Yeah, how happy were you when you saw on the back of the Budgies 143 that he just skied one first over straight up to fine leg in that grand final?
Yeah, so we had to play. We thought Budgie would either we penciled Budgie to make either under 10 or make 100.
Yep, fair enough.
So our whole plan, yeah. So basically, everything we thought we spoke about was don't just jump on everything. Don't let him get to 10 because I'm not sure how many people know South Warrandyte, but I rated him extremely highly, even to the point where the year where I said everyone left and myself and Dave Cutler and that was sticking around. Yeah, I'll tell a few people that he should be one of the leaders or the vice captain of the club because he'll be our best batsman that year for sure. I thought he was an extremely good cricketer.
Yes, he certainly showed that the week before, but couldn't get it done in the granny yet. But you had a couple of older players come through that day.
Yeah.
Was it Spencer made the runs?
Yeah, Glenn. Yeah, Glenn got 42.
Yeah.
And he just didn't matter if it was a practice match or playing in the lower grades or playing in a first 7 grand final. He just bats the same way every time, and it came off for him.
That's fantastic. Yeah, the experience there coming through. What
were the celebrations like off the field? Was it the moment you were hoping for? Was this the first premiership you'd won as a player, or certainly the first premiership as captain, I'd imagine?
Yeah. So it was amazing. It was sort of it was surreal. I was sort of I didn't know if I go nuts to the Rangers boys or I go up to like Milne and Barrel and say sorry, or it was an extremely strange feeling. But my highlight out of that whole, this might sound stupid, but my highlight out of the whole game, I didn't get a heap of runs, but I batted for a fair while. And as I walked off, every single South Warrandyte person clapped me. And that's probably that was probably one of the greatest moments of that grand final.
Lovely. Well, certainly you played with a lot of South Warrandyte legends. Can you tell us a little bit about playing with Gaz and what it was like having, you talked about the swagger before. But, it was like walking out with a bloke that could bowl just way better than anybody else in the grade.
Yeah, Gaz was unbelievable to play with. The things you learned from him, the things he could do was unbelievable. But what sort of got me the most was if we were ever going bad, or he would always put himself in the worst positions to make us be better. Do you know what I mean? So, like, if it was like 40 degrees and he just bowled and then he was sped, but a partnership happened, instead of having to breathe, he'd bring himself back on. Yep. Because he knew, like, as our leader, like the way he captained was basically everyone just jumped on his back and, rode the wave with him.
So in your time of cricket, would he be your best teammate, or have you had some other ripping blokes you played with?
Yes, Andy Wu from Croydon Rangers.
Andy Wu.
Yep.
Andy Wu's, a fantastic cricket player, a fantastic cricket person. Steve Lindsay, me and Sleek opened the batting together, I think about 60 times. And
wow.
We had great chemistry and great fun out there. I remember there was one game where I remember the very first ball of the game, I got a leg by off my thigh pad. And I remember Sleek went berserk, and I remember everyone started clapping for his 50. I looked up at the scorebook and we're none for 51. So, play with him. But played like Ben Eagle, David Hill, Bozo. But probably one of the best people.
Some of the old time.
Teammates, one of the best teammates you ever had is Dave Cutler.
Yeah, great. Love playing cricket with Cuts.
One of our absolute favourites as well, DC.
Yeah, he's just back foot step and all that stuff, and he always backs you in no matter what. So, and that's what you want to have a teammate.
Yeah, love that suggestion. What about your most annoying teammate who really just had all the shit gags out there all day?
Probably myself.
No, we don't want humility right now. I want to hear you pointing fingers at who was the worst teammate. You've played a lot of cricket. There's got to be one.
Nudgy used to say some shit that would really.
Oh, now we're hearing it.
I remember when they went to Nudgy get hit for 30 off and over and give the batsman one of the almighty sprays. Yeah, Barrel's never been short of confidence.
Yes.
Barrel's never been short of confidence. I remember one day Gaz gave him the ball and just said, if you bowl short, I'll kill you. And I'm a bit on it. Barrel walks up and goes, I'm going to make you look like an idiot here. So Barrel drops the bouncer and the guy puts him over to the club rooms at Coleman.
Upon Barrel's return to South Warrandyte, he asked the boys, and he didn't know a few of them young fellas he hadn't played with before. He said, hey, boys, do you reckon you could call me the Wild Thing, my nickname? Yeah, it's not real well. Definitely call him the Wild Thing, but probably not the way he wants, unfortunately.
And so,
yeah, go, Sean.
So, final question probably from us is, so I don't think you've played the last couple of years. Are you looking to play this year? Is it time to start transitioning to the vets? Heard you mention you had a little one. Are they looking to get involved? What's the sort of state of Bing's cricket this year?
I'm not quite sure, actually. I have definitely got itchy feet. My daughter's 4, but I've had also since the break I've had a son, and he's 1.5. So obviously the time constraints that cricket provides along with work does make it hard. But I'm definitely want to get involved in some capacity, whether it be helping with some batting coaching or just playing where I can in the lower grades. Just get back to enjoying the game.
Yeah, lovely. We'll give you a call then for sure. You just mentioned your work. What's it like having the great Lucas Williams as an employee?
Yeah, Lucas was good. Lucas, he has left working with us now because he went to go to Canada to pursue his snowboarding. But Lucas is a very, very good worker. This is one of the best fuckwits you've. Oh, excuse me. He's one of the best idiots.
Don't worry, there's no swearing policy on this podcast.
No?
It's not a PG podcast. You're fine.
Oh, beautiful. You said dumb. Yeah.
Last guy we just need to ask you about is our fearless coach. He played with Damien Volvo for a long time. Yep. He's a good friend of the show here. And the way he goes on about his, particularly his Chandler year, you'd think he was Don Bradman. But the only thing I can remember when I was a young fella coming to the club was just sort of a big fat guy just with a bit of a front foot defence. Can you tell us a little bit about Damien Volvo, what it was like playing with a younger Damien, and if he was actually any good or not?
Yeah, I don't want to. Unfortunately, I have to say he was good. He was extremely fun to play cricket with, actually, Bozzo. He didn't take anything too seriously. My first ever 50 I made just out for a night. I came into a bit of a dicey time. I think we were 3 and not many, and me and Damo put on about 140, 150 odd, and I still got bad out there with him. It was just full of laughter, and it was just it was like the best experience of a cover drive I've ever seen.
Wow. High praise. We won't tell him that you said that.
Might have to delete that last little bit from the podcast, but
be edited out.
Yeah, he's still funny to fart in an elevator though, because he thinks he's funny.
Definitely.
Yeah, so that was it.
That's it, I think. Thanks for joining us, Binger. It's been great chatting to you, and hopefully we see you around the club for a beer sooner rather than later.
Cheers, boys. Appreciate it. Thanks very much.
No worries.
Have a good afternoon.
See you, mate.
See ya.
Cheers, Bing.
Cheers, mate.
And now we have time for some bonus content, Sean. One of our favourite things to do throughout the week is go through all the fan mail that we get sent in and try to filter through to answer some of your questions, some of your life problems. Some of them are probably not quite appropriate for this all ages show, and we try to get back to you in good time. But some of the problems are related specifically to cricket. Some of them aren't even from Turbo. So we've got one of them here that we got from a club legend. A question, a dilemma. It's actually quite a long story, but we think it's worth going through because it touches on one of cricket's most individual rules and a decision that every captain has to make throughout their career. So, great. Stu Batten wrote this one in. Sean, one of our former coaches and former premiership player at South Warrandyte. Plenty of memories of Stu, and I'll just get straight into this one. Feel free to add your thoughts as we go. Dear panel, I listened with great delight to the very first Hawks podcast and marvel as I was taken through the colourful and historic journey by the very melodic and dulcet tones of the great Sean McMahon, although the somewhat tinny interjections of Troy's voice were a little distracting.
I was
That's
going to
Stu,
say a
old
bit
man.
harsh, but it checks out from my perspective.
I did eventually warm to his ability to at least cajole Sean into some form of direction. Sounds like a Saturday afternoon when you first rock up. I most enjoyed Sean's reminiscences of the great grounds played on in the past, and it took me back to the one and only game I ever played on the hallowed turf of
Oh, don't say
Doncaster
that
East.
name.
Great ground. Oh, it's just a picturesque sort of just what you dream about when you're a kid. Bruce Templeton's and Doncaster East. The great ground was steeped in history, and there were many fine stories of historic deeds and great heroics from the past, long before I took my first steps onto this magical place. To set the scene a little, I was well in my 40s, and at the time where third 11 cricket at Doncaster East may not have been the pinnacle of my career, but my word, it was very, very close. I was playing with the great Tonefish, and he was captain, and there was a strapping young South Warrandyte outfit under his command that was garnished with the legendary Andrew Hall, who not only was one of the club's most mysterious batsmen, but the finest no LBWs in my rulebook umpires the low grades
I've
have
played
ever
with his
seen.
son for a few years, and I think the apple hasn't fallen far from the tree on that one.
No, same footwork, same no LBWs, same head as well. It's fantastic to see. That, however, was where the experience however, somewhat unfortunately, after that was where my ability began. However, when I say ability, the youth in that team was very much that. It was youthful. They were very young. And while it was full of potential, it's probably fair to say that the realization of that potential was maybe scheduled to be realized a little bit further into the future. It graced such names that are now legendary at the club, such as Tommy Lurch Hall, Robert Bowen, and Matthew Sharrock, and Chris Scappy Ryan. Some of our favourites
Rippers.
there. Despite the great future that was in store for this group at the time, the team was not travelling particularly well. I was occasionally having a hit of cricket and was lucky enough to be considered worthy of standing beside Tonefish as the fine man drank beers on a summer's Thursday evening. While regaling his rich stories of the team's Herculean efforts, he lamented that sadly none of them had returned the skip with a breakthrough win that he had been desperately seeking. He mused over the lack of experience in the team and the lack of ability that came with the available experience and proposed that maybe I might consider wandering out one of these pleasant Saturday afternoons for a little hit and giggle and bestow my wisdom and guidance amongst this immature group. The memory of how much pain 70 overs on a cricket field can bring to a 46-year-old body, or even a
I think it's
20-something-year-old
been
body.
hurting me since under 16s, but I digress.
For the subsequent 3 days had been washed from my brain by the sixth beer of the Thursday night. And all of a sudden, the thought of stepping out in the pristine white sounded like a very fine idea indeed. We've hooked a few people in.
It's one of the all-time great tricks for the cricket committee.
I arrived at the hallowed turf, and it was hard not to feel overwhelmed. The sight of the jagged rocks and broken glass buried into the surface was complemented beautifully by the loose strip of astroturf that flapped about just short of a length at the northern end. The exposed concrete, the 35-metre mid-wicket boundaries, and the road deep mid-on seemed like the perfect targets, and together they finished the magnificent picture that was this legendary ground. Tonefish, of course, lost the toss, and Knox City elected to bat. Now, I only have to mention those two words, Knox and City, and I know it will send a shiver down the spine of many a fine hawk. Now, I know your co-host, Troy, will consider himself to be one of the great sledgers, but I'm sure even he will concede the Knox City boys were in a league of their own. There's a very fine balance there, I think, Sean, between sledging and just like flat-out violent threats. And Knox City certainly walked and crossed that line and punched in the face a few times.
Yeah, so I think that definitely rings true. I'm pretty sure Knox City may have even taken it from violent threats to violent actions, but that might be another story from another time.
Yeah, one of the few teams to end up out of the league. So very high standards indeed. In fact, they were so fine. Some of their sledges even had the rare ability to sledge while they were batting.
Very rare skill.
I'm sure you can agree. I know the great Scott Brasher was one of those, and well, yeah, I think Brash would be really delighted that we're comparing with Knox City blokes. As Sharrock was being lofted straight back over his head, our counterpart batsman let the young fella know that even though he was still young, that he was still the very worst bowler that our batting friend had ever seen. And Matt Sharrock, if you are listening to this, please return my calls. I called you a couple of times over the last couple of years, but got nothing back from you. So, and while we could see the ball still rolling off into the distance in the 5 minutes it took to reach that ball, Tom Hall was reminded that if you bowl flat and slow and shit, I'm just going to smash you because you're shit.
Words to
Fair enough. I was left feeling a little bit aggrieved, but it was difficult to come back with a well-placed word when every second delivery was just being jettisoned out of the schoolyard. It took about 60 overs for that opposition to reach a commendable 280, which was a very fine score for the grade, but not necessarily for the ground. We had to bat about 10 overs before the day's play ended. Well before the split innings days, this one, and thank God for the split innings.
Saved many a cricketer's career, I think, those split innings. But not this year, of course.
Yeah, definitely. No, not needed. The young and up-and-coming opening batsman Robert Bowen strode up proudly with his older brother Jason. Tonefish wisely directed Andrew Hall and myself out for umpiring duties, knowing what was likely to happen in that final half hour of play. And not unexpectedly, the skipper was
that
right
is
at it
leadership
again.
right there for you.
City, it's you got to consider all things, and certainly the umpire choice
is a crucial thing.
One. Never let Marshy
know your man.
I think that was one of the key learnings. Yep. Knox City opened up with a tearaway fast bowler who could reasonably be described as slippery for the grade, and a wily in-swinging veteran bowling into the breeze from the southern end. And while Jason bravely wore the bruises at one end, it was the younger Bowen who copped the abuse at the far end. Classic Knox City, that, Sean, just ripping into the young kid.
I think some of the most savage sledges I ever heard was against Knox City, and I only played them 3 times.
It was crude, it was unmerciful, and it was relentless. It was hard not to get heckles up as I stood there umpiring. I watched amused as Hall Senior wore the abuse with his famous vacant and nonplussed look that he loved to put on when he was umpiring in that sort of, what are you appealing for? I don't give batsmen out look on his face. And I can absolutely picture that. He certainly passed that down to Tom as well. It was a tough, relentless barrage, but the stumps, the Mighty Hawks, survived to be none for 30. Gee, that's just fantastic.
As an opening batsman, I couldn't be more impressed with that. That's the hardest job in cricket, is those slippery last overs before stumps. Get through none down, always a win.
Absolutely. I spoke to Tonefish and suggested it may be wise for me to move up the list to number 3 position, as we might need some early fires. Fight some early fires. I must admit, though, in my latter years of cricket, I did find it hard to stay interested in batting for any length of innings, but the crass nature of the opposition did trigger some lost desire in me. With the score having passed 50 and the younger Bowen losing his wicket, he had copped a brutal short ball that he fended away only to be caught at gully, and I could clearly hear the send-off, as well as Jason's defense of his younger sibling being drowned out by the barbs of the opposition as Robbie trudged gloomily from the field. But it was on. The abuse started from the fine leg fielder, who was walking back to his position as I made my way out. Why don't you retire, you old prick, and let the young blokes who can actually play have a go? Wow, that's a nice barb to cap before you even.
Welcome to the crease.
The first ball I received landed nicely, both before and after I hit it. A sharpish ball that landed just short of a length, and an excellent first up delivery similarly turned out to be a similarly excellent result for the Hawks as I lifted it straight back over the bowler's head for 6. Do not get Stewie Batten fired up, Sean.
A very, very hard man. And yes, he's the sort of old bloke that you just laugh and joke around with and try and get him out with boredom. Certainly don't fire him up.
And certainly don't not turn up to training either.
Learnt that the hard way, repeatedly.
It seemed to set a new tone for the game between Jason and the young Joel Hollower. There's a name, blast from the past. We plundered the attack, and by tea, with the score having already reached 240, we were well under the way, quieting down our opposition. Wowee. I spoke to Tonefish at tea and suggested that there's still a lot of rungs out there, Skip, and he nodded thoughtfully to himself and rubbed that unshaven cheek before settling back quietly into his deck chair. Later on, with the score at an incredible 402, the final drinks began. Our increasingly more friendly opposition was suggesting that maybe a beer might taste better than the orange cordial, but that only raised the heckles of our uncompromising skipper. He had spent an hour working on that cordial the morning, and he knew that after 15 taste tests, it was mixed just right. So
Love
we
that.
batted on. The last man went out to bat at 548 with the score on 537. And sadly, our skipper was the only player not to score a half century that day. Meaning even Tom Hall, I say again, yes, Tom Hall. I didn't actually repeat that, Tom, just to let you know. That's actually written down by Stu. Even Tom Hall patted the ball with effortless ease to all parts of the field as he put on an incredible stand of 73 with his old man. That would have been some Dean Jones-like footwork between those two.
Graceful, absolutely graceful.
Tone finally stopped, shook the hand of the opposition speaker and turned away and walked off the ground. As he always had, he strode with purpose, head held high, as it always is, and with his face covered with that familiar Tonefish smirk, as he thought to himself, this is a great day's cricket. So my question for the panel, and it has troubled me for yet many years now, and it's one of the great questions in cricket. Should we have declared?
It is the age-old question. Wow. Should I have declared? It's a feeling that local captains will deal with quite a lot in their time. What would your initial thoughts be, Troy?
Well, I'm a little bit more ruthless than you in these matters, Sean. I enjoy staying out there. And to me, there's always that, like you think there's this understanding between you and the captain, but I've been burned once or twice too many times and been left out there to bake on a 40-degree day a couple of times. So for me, this is a bit like the Supreme Court decision over there in the US. You think you've got these social norms that you have to stick to, but all it takes is one dickhead to leave you out there all day, and 80 years of social norms go out the windows. And so for me, you just do what is best for you. You do what is in the rules and is best for your team at the time. It's best for you to have a bat. You just keep on batting. If you want to have a beer, then you go off and have a beer. But I love watching sides bake out there and just really plundering and getting your average up. It's all about the My Cricket average. It's all about the glory. So I like leaving sides.
Interesting. I'll probably come at it from a slightly different perspective. As a younger fella coming through the grades, I certainly thought there was merit in staying around and getting a nice, cheap, confidence-boosting 50. However, as I've sort of begin to play the game a bit more and more and realise that it's going to be the exact same blokes I'm playing against for the next 30 years, I may as well find some magnanimity on the day, as I never know what's going to be happening in the next 2 or 3 years and who's going to be in my team and how we go. So nowadays I've found that one uniting factor with the game of cricket is the beer at the end of the game. So maybe that's my motto at the moment.
Very true. Very wise. I do remember a day a few years ago. I think I'd attended some festival or another, and so it was to play the second day of a game down in the fifths. and just thought of us. Went in there with a sort of chest out, thinking I was just going to roll this team. I think young Matt Falkingham might have been with me as well. We might have been at Creamfields the week before, and he might remember this because we were really confident going in there. Lockie was the captain, and I thought, geez, this is going to be a great day. And the team got bottled out for 120, but everyone thought, don't worry, we've got Adonis and Falk. And so we go out there to bowl, and like second or third ball of the game, the guy skies one straight up in the air to Franz, who
One
is
of the
the 11th
most
fielder.
gifted cricketers you've ever seen.
Yeah, and he skied it so high that, Grist probably could have got there for a mid-wicket to square leg, but, neither of them made it, and the ball's in the air for about 8 minutes. And so after that, I think Falk got dispatched for 48 off 2 overs, and the other team passed 120 within the 10-over mark, and we found out that this old bloke that opened, it was his first game since he retired from the Melbourne District, Melbourne Cricket Club ones, and he was playing with his son 10 years later. And he just peeled off a nice 100. And so we thought, 40-odd degrees, probably time to go home. And they said, no, we're going to bat all of our kids now. They haven't had much of a go this season. And so we bowled all of our kids while I sat there at fine leg, having my expectations absolutely crushed, and sat there for probably another 5 hours, absolutely cursing Lockie for not just walking off the ground. And from that day on, I've just been a bit of prick, to be honest. And so I probably would not declare just to pay back that guy, even though none of them were there.
So I think our feedback for our concerned Hawk is do what you want.
Absolutely. Go your own way. I think it was fantastic to see Tom Hall make a 50. Otherwise, what would Tom Hall talk to us about every Saturday if he didn't have that shining example to lean back on?
Absolutely spot on.
Well, Sean, thank you very much. You've been fantastic. Always a great friend of the show. We'll be back in the next couple of weeks with the next installment of the Hawkscast. If you have any questions that you want to ask us, anything about life, cricket, Sean's full of great wisdom. He's actually taken on some life coaching roles himself. So if you've got anything to ask, please drop us a line onto any of the social media channels. And as always, we'll see you very soon for a beer.
Hawk.
Thank you.